Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Death by Adaptation podcast, a bi-weekly book club where we choose one classic book and compare and contrast it against its cinematic adaptations. I'm your host, Nicolò Grasso, and today I'm joined by the host of the Uncut Gems podcast and a good buddy of mine, Jakub Flasz. How are you doing, Jakub?
Well, my ass may be dumb, but I ain't a dumbass. I'm doing well. How are you doing?
I'm very happy to be here. I'm very excited. We're back again after like a couple of months, I think, since the Fight Club recording. This is one of a double feature that we're doing for this adaptation. But I'm very, very happy to talk about some quality cinema finally, after talking about Blonde and getting depressed with Marilyn Monroe and Norma Jean and people exaggerating in their reactions on Twitter and Letterboxd. We're finally talking about something that I think we can all universally say is pretty darn good. But before we continue, as always, if you're on YouTube, Spotify, Apple, Google, wherever you're listening to this, consider following us, leaving a like, sharing, 5 stars, whatever rocks your boat. Makes us very happy that you appreciate the show, that you're following us. And now, let's just start talking about Rum Punch, aka Jackie Brown.
Is that what I think it is?
What do you think it is?
I think it's a gun pressed up against my dick.
Well, you thought right. Now take your hands from around my throat, nigga.
What the hell's wrong with you, Jackie?
Shut the fuck up and don't you move. Oh, what is this? What the fuck is this,
hey,
huh?
hey, now that ain't got nothing to do with you. I carry that all the time. You've been talking to them police too much.
Oh, the police didn't try and strangle my ass.
Oh, come on, girl. You know I was just playing with you.
Well, I ain't playing with you. I'ma unload both of these motherfuckers if you don't do what I tell you to do. You understand what I'm saying?
Jackie, stop acting crazy.
Do you understand what the fuck I'm
Yeah,
saying?
woman, damn.
Now sit your ass down on that sofa.
See? Police start fucking with your mind. They start pitting black against black. That's how they do. You know, been doing it since the beginning.
Shut your raggedy ass up and sit the fuck down. And put your hands behind your head.
Come on, it's getting silly now.
Oh, silly? You want to see some motherfucking silly? If I have to tell you to shut up one more time, I'm gonna shut you up.
I just came over here to talk to you.
To talk? The way I see it, you and me got one motherfucking thing to talk about. One thing. And that's what you are willing to do for me.
Elmore Leonard, beloved writer of pulp novels, is written westerns, crime dramas, a whole variety of things. In 1992, he released Rum Punch, which was a sequel to one of his earliest books. You see some characters coming back, like Ordell Robbie and Louis Gara, and it's one of those books that, how do you even say it? This is just plain fun. This is a heist crime thriller with light comedic elements. It's one of those books where people are always trying to outsmart each other. It's very quick, very witty, and also entertaining. It has this wide variety of characters, from criminals to police officers, ATF agents. It's I went into this only knowing about the Tarantino movie, and so getting some surprises, like one of the main characters is called Jackie Burke, and she's a blonde white woman, was a bit of a surprise. It's like, okay, this is already different. It's already one of the major differences here. Um, but I really, really had a blast with this. It's a very simple novel. I think there are layers in here to discuss briefly, but I'm curious to know what you think of it. Jakub, what did you think of Rum Punch?
Well, when I sat down to read Rum Punch, I had not read a single Elmore Leonard book. I have since read 3 more.
Hey.
So I mean, I'm a few weeks removed because I read them sort of like I read it kind of sort of mid-August, so it's almost a month ago. But then since then, I've been in almost a constant, like an Elmore Leonard. I think the German word for it is Zug. Like it's just this sort
one
of like,
after the other.
just one after the other, like if like chain reading them. Just because I read this, I read Hombre, I read Out of Sight. And by the way, there's a connection between this and Out of Sight because Ray Nicolette, played by Michael Keaton in here, is in the book. as well. And I think if I remember correctly, he's also in the film as an uncredited cameo in Out of Sight by Steven
It is
Soderbergh.
one of the weirdest connections, crossovers between different
Uh,
studios and whatnot.
I mean, it makes sense because I have a feeling that Elmore Leonard is kind of like I've read 4 of his books, and I'm just about. I think I had to take a break from his books because you can really just chain read like 20 of them and you'll be fine. Like they're so easy to read. They're
They
so
really are.
and not just because they're so disposable, but they're so damn entertaining. With the exception of Ombre, because I think he eventually found his voice. I think we talked about this on our Patreon show. Patreon.com/UncutGemsPod is where you can find it. Just myself and Randy, we were talking about Ombre. And I feel like he found his voice a little bit later on in life. In like that voice that I kind of like, I think he just developed it a little bit earlier because I think Ombre was like one of his earliest books,
Mhm.
like 1960 something. I can't remember. Yeah, so it was very very early doors. But anyway, Rum Punch. I sat down and read this, and it was a very quick read. Probably half because I kind of knew the story already, but then again, we'll probably get to how the story differs a little bit from how Tarantino treated it. And I had so much fun reading it. It's such an entertaining novel. It's just mind-boggling to me. The Rum Punch is like a very like wholeheartedly entertaining novel. It's written in such a peculiar way that again, last time I talked about something with you, I think was No Country for Old Men, and I think this is something that I'll just use the word again. The book is so incredibly cinematic. It just makes total sense that someone would pick it up and make it into a film. And it also,
Yes.
like looking how the book is structured, it makes so much sense that it was picked up by someone like Tarantino, the Coen brothers, or like the Soderberghs of this world. Like this has to be picked up by someone like this, and indeed it was. But I had so much time, such a good time reading this. It's just mind-boggling. It's so good, very clearly written. I mean, he doesn't really spend time on just descriptions of stuff. He just gets straight into the point. Like you're thrown into a world full of gangsters and mobsters and gun runners and cops and robbers and police officers and ATF agents, FBI and whatever. And just seems like it's a whole complex mess, but it really isn't. It's just so easy. It's easy to follow, and it's easy to kind of get invested in this, and especially that at the heart of it all, and I mean this kind of comes back with to Out of Sight, which I also read as well. There's a love story which is just fundamentally compelling. It's just and it's not really taking really too much attention away from everything else. It's just there developing on the sort of sidelines of everything else because there are people hanging out together and just find each other in this mess. It's just great. It's just great. I don't know. I love it. How about you?
Yeah. Yeah, no, I had a blast reading it. Saying that it's an easy read is an understatement. It just flows so smoothly, so well. Whether it's the dialogue, which this book is chock full of dialogue, the characters are so well written, so well delineated. Like right from the first moment that you see them talking with one another, whether it's Ordell and Louis or Melanie or Jackie with Max Cherry, like you understand them, you get who they are. It's even fascinating. And have you read the first book where these characters appeared, like
Oh, the
Ordell and
Switch.
Louis? Yeah.
No, but I have it. I decided I need to read it at some point, but then I had to kind of take a break
Mm.
just to read anything else. And then that was a big mistake because I immediately jumped into Life of Pi, and this is just garbage.
It's like I miss Elmore Leonard. Give
I'm
it
just, I
back to
mean,
me.
yeah, I'm just like,
Why did
Elmer
they do
Leonard
this?
would never spend 25 pages trying to talk to me about, like mating rituals of flamingos that he's never even witnessed himself, because he's clearly just Jan. I'm sorry to hijack this, but Jan Martel writes about stuff he has never seen, or like he looks at this sort of rule of write what you know and says this is not for me. I'm gonna write about what I don't know.
It's
Anyway.
like the most boring part of an adventure novel written by Italians set in India.
Well, like he admits in the. I'm sorry for derailing this already. We're
Oh,
like
go
5
for
minutes
it.
in, but he writes. Jan Martels is a guy who would, in his author's note in the beginning of Life of Pi, he would just say that I set out to India for my holiday in India to write a book about Portugal. So he wanted to go on like a month or 2 months long holiday to this. He rented a house in India, and I have all my notes, I have got all my research done, and he's going to India to write a book about. No, if you just buy a different plane ticket, just go to Portugal, just write a book about Portugal in Portugal, just go and taste the food, just be there, just smell the air, just talk to people, just...
Probably not as cheap as India back then.
So yeah, so I have a feeling, but Elmore Leonard kind of strikes me as someone who, first and foremost, he speaks to people because he writes dialogue exactly how people speak.
It's very
It's just
natural, very fluent.
extremely naturalistic, and also I think he has this sort of, I think, okay, what I want to call this, that the perspective he assumes is changing, because
Mm.
he writes as though you're in a third person sort of godlike perspective, but he's always in someone's head. So you're getting these sort of like offhand remarks, as like someone says, well, can you please close the door? And then he just follows on with what the guy thinks in his head. Just, what a piece of shit this guy is. Because you're in this perspective today, and then he'll just have a little star, and then you're replaying the same scene from the other side of the door, and it's just great. Like that's what makes it cinematic. It almost feels like this is like a De Palma film. It's just with split screens everywhere. It's just in a
In
book
an alternate
form.
universe, we did get a De Palma Leonard adaptation. I can totally see that.
Oh, we still can. The man's alive.
Well, it's like if it's anything like Domino, whatever it's called, the
It's
last one
not
he
that.
made.
Well, it's not going to be very good.
But he can try. He can try contacting the estate. Plenty of books to choose from. Just remake Jackie Burke, remake the Rum Punch. But yes, what do you think about the characters in this story? We've mentioned them, they're by name very briefly, but just the way they're written, the way they interact. I think I've always had a soft spot of
Mhm.
dumb criminals versus very clever criminals that manipulate and control the dumber ones.
Mhm.
How do you feel about the entire mind game that goes on in this book and all the time that's devoted, first of all, to just spending time with them? It's
Mhm.
something that we'll mention it, of course, once we fully transition into the movie. But I've had conversations with some people that say too much time is spent setting up characters. This could have been like half an hour shorter, and blah blah blah. I disagree. What do you think? Like, in
Well,
just speaking of the novel, I mean, at
just
least.
just containing myself to the novel, I think the novel uh, is sort of set up as a hangout experience, transitioning into uh, like a more sort of a traditional plot, right?
Hmm.
But I have a feeling that this is the film kind of does similarly as well, because you do spend quite a lot of time with Melanie, you spend a lot of time with Ordell, you spend a lot of time with Jackie,
Hmm.
and I would even say that you learn quite a lot about, say, about Ray Nicolette, and then his buddy as well. So you develop these sort of strange relationships with these people, and then you develop them in the sort of by hearing about tangential stuff, like Ray Nicolette has his marital problems, and they kind of
Mm.
resurface like in Out of Sight as well in the book, because like this sort of Karen Cisco character is kind of like she thinks he's hot, and then but he's married. so so there's just these little things in there, and then I kind of liked how you called this of this the dynamic between smart criminals and dumb criminals, and in here you have this dynamic because there's one bona fide idiot in there, and that's Lewis, right?
Just a waste of oxygen.
Lewis is just the sort of he's the henchman, like he's the sort of the big strong dude who's supposed to kind of do shit. I mean, there are other people like Beaumont that you just
Hmm?
tangentially meet, and then there's another dude in the book whose name now escapes me, who then ends up in the hospital.
The one from the shootout, yeah.
Yeah, and then there's whole subplot with the sort of the skinhead gang as well. So it's about
Yeah.
these sort of like you see this. There's like a mixture of like I want to say 5 to 6 characters trying to outwit each other,
Mhm.
and then in that it's kind of in that mind game you kind of just you see how this sort of pressure just moves from one end to the other, and then eventually you see how Jackie kind of just ends up on top of this. It's just a fascinating study, and I just happen to be just there, just hanging out with them as they just try to outsmart each other and outmatch each other, and it probably kind of sort of with like Max Cherry, who's just kind of like, my marriage is falling apart, and this woman's really hot.
She's rocking my life.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, I really fancy the way these characters are written. I really like the sort of the dynamic of these people. Are just like, even when some people will actually say like Melanie thinks that Ordell's an idiot, but Ordell knows that Melanie thinks that he's an idiot, so he kind of plays to what she thinks he is. So everyone kind of just has something on one another, and then they're just trying to always just, there's this sort of game of catch that they're
Yeah,
playing,
like
and it's, yeah.
like you have
So it was,
Nicolette's playing Jackie to get her to give him Ordell, and just Jackie's playing him, but she's also playing Ordell. Ordell thinks he's playing her, and then he starts making his own games. Like it's alive. It's
mhm.
just alive. Like every choice that can be kind of shocking or surprising, and there's a twist and there's a turn. It's always like, no, but it makes sense because you
Yeah.
spent like 100 pages just setting up these characters and hearing them talk about random nonsense
Mhm.
and talking about like what they like to drink, where they like to go, different types of bars, how they dress, how they spend their free time, like all of that. It just clicks. It's like a jigsaw, and you just don't know where all the pieces fit. But the longer you go on, it's like, oh no, now you start seeing the clearer picture. It's just beautiful to see unfold.
Mhm.
Even with all the added sequences, well, like even from all the sequences that will later be cut from the movie script,
Mhm.
um, like the skinhead subplot that you mentioned, where it gives someone like Melanie a little bit more character, a little bit more agency. I would
Mhm.
say that's one of the big differences between the two versions, is that there's no clear-cut protagonist in the book. It feels
I
more like a
suppose so,
proper
yes.
ensemble, in the sense that, like, again, it is called Rum Punch. It's not called Jackie Burke or Max Cherry or the Robbie. So you really get to go deep, almost at the same level with all of these characters, which is a choice that I very much respect.
I suppose, and like in terms of who the protagonist is in the book, I would say that there's two of them, because there's Jackie and there's Max Cherry kind of coming to meet each other from two different ends of the narrative, and then just kind of just becoming an important part of the plot. They're sort of interacting together, and their sort of arcs kind of interlace,
Hmm.
because Jackie needs an out of this life, and then Max Cherry needs an out of his life, and then they both become catalysts for each other's changes, because they're like, oh, fine, I'll like. She makes the decision to kind of just take the $500,000 and whatever and just run,
Hmm.
because she thinks Max Cherry is going to follow, and then Max Cherry just takes this sort of opportunity to leave his sort of wife, with whom he's separated but not divorced, even though he knows she has a different relationship with this guy who paints shitty paintings. so, so
Just
it's
random people in the corners. It's like,
I don't, yeah. And it's just like, this is exactly the type of art that I just do not appreciate, when someone just has to stand in the corner behind you and say like, this means this is about capitalism.
but it sells. They have sold like 5 paintings already or something like that.
Yeah, but then like this makes this whole dynamic of, like, you as you're saying, like, well, this one's playing a game on this, and this one's doing this, and then Ray Nicolette has this on Jackie, and then Ordo has this on all of them, and it's just, and it makes it impossible to put down, and then you just start getting invested in this, and all of a sudden, just, can you get out of the bathroom, please? Because you've been there for 45 minutes. How, Jesus, what did you eat?
Eating a good novel. That's what I'm doing.
It's just like,
Just
yeah.
consuming it is just. That's something that I really loved about the book, is how well written the relationship is between Max Cherry and Jackie Burke.
Hmm.
It is a stealth romance, like you mentioned earlier. It is just kind of by surprise. You go like, oh yeah, they're falling for each other. Oh yeah, it's a romance.
I
And
mean,
there's
it
always
flew in. when they have sex, right?
Well, that's a clear moment. That's a strong moment. Um, but there's just something about the way there's so much respect, and that's something like, it's the beautiful part about the written word. Like, you can go deep into the characters' thoughts, and there are so many moments with like Max Cherry that will also be replicated in the movie, but just in the book itself, you you get it. Like, you get it. Like, for instance, when he finds out that she stole his gun from the glove compartment in the car, it's like, oh shit. And he goes to her apartment, he's like, like, damn it, like, she took the gun. How am I going to react? What am I going to do? And then she just opens the door and immediately tells him, like, oh yeah, sorry that I took it, but I needed it for my own protection. And here it is. Like, "Hey, want a coffee? Want to sit down?" It's just, yes, as soon as she's opened her mouth, it's like, yeah, no, it's fine. Everything's fine. No problem, no biggie. It's
Mhm.
just, it's just over it. It's a very simple, tender relationship that works. It's it's interesting, and I think we're going to transition into the film very soon, just to
Mhm.
better embrace those comparisons. But I'm not too big of a fan of how very physical it becomes. Not so much because it works in the whole pulp, um, in the pulping type of book that it is. Like, and they have the sex and their romance, and there's a stud in the bed, and then they all live together happily ever after at the end, going on their journeys. It's nice, it works, it fits, but there's something in the movie, and we'll get to it later on, but just that's reading the book had me a little bit like, how do you feel about that? Just this whole
Just sex.
dynamic. How do you feel
Sex
about the
is nice.
sex?
Feels nice.
It's not like stealing $550,000, but
No, probably not. But never saw. I've never seen this much money, so I wouldn't say. Um,
hoping to reconsider.
I would say that I don't want to say I disagree a little bit because I kind of just find that there's a difference. It's a pulpy sort of way of writing this, but I feel like
Yeah.
he kind of makes this sort of very classic distinction, which you see in, I want to say, like, it's a cinematic distinction that like protagonists make love, villains copulate. Just fuck. It's just I always kind of just my go-to sort of image for this is the scene in Desperado, where like Antonio Banderas and Salma Hayek go like, "Mano del mar." They have this sort of like this steamy sort of scene, and there's candlelight and everything, and just a cut to the villain just getting mounted by this just and there's screams everywhere.
It's
It's
very
just Jesus.
animalistic.
It's very they're taking this seriously. Like there's no like emotion, like it's supposed to be like devoid of emotion. So I have a feeling that there's an element of this in the book as well. But I don't know. I just I it, you know it almost feels like it's an interesting sort of breather, like these sort of tender moments of them just like, well, and they just made love again and something like this, and he just never dwells on just like he did that. Like this is never going to like 50 Shades of Grey territory of like, well,
Thank God it isn't.
but but it kind of serves as a bit of a breather into an otherwise very procedural story, because everything else is kind of just setting up these sort of big cons, this massive set piece at the very sort of, I want to say like the last third of the book is basically this big money exchange, right? This sort of
Yes.
big bag swapsies sort of situation, and in the meantime setting up the how the skinheads come into this because they have to have the guns, and everything kind of makes sense, but then all of a sudden you can just like forget about it and just spend the time in the corner just like looking at these people having sex. And just like,
You
this is
describe
great,
it like that.
this is great. Like, I keep doing it. Like, don't mind me, I'm just here just reading this, don't mind me, just yeah. Oh, you're spooning. That's very nice. It's just, So I don't know. I just feel this is a sort of interesting sort of like a little pause from a very another is very intense sort of experience, because it is a hangout experience that is also extremely intense, because this book does not slow down for much more than just for these two people to have a tender moment in the bedroom.
Yeah, which
Yeah.
I love the way just Max Cherry is a beast under the sheets. He's just ready to reload, leaves you sore, but in a good way. Just
Yeah.
all this description is like I was
Yeah, I
wondering
know.
because it's Max Cherry is supposed to be in the book. I want to say like 60-ish, like late 50s still. I was
Still
wondering
got it.
if it's
Still got it.
still got it. I was wondering if he's an Elmore Leonard self-insert. He's just like he's the cool guy just watching everything from afar and just like I'm all for this business but just
How
doing what
how
I'm doing.
how old is Elmore Leonard? Hold on.
I just found out he's dead. For some reason I thought he was still alive and much younger.
Just 2013 he died. So he was in
87.
1992 when he was writing this, he was 60 something. So you could
Yeah,
argue that he was inserting
it's close
himself.
enough. It's
He
close
was
enough, I
inserting
think.
himself. He was because like there's no debate. Like he writes for men.
Oh
Like this is a
yeah, oh
book
yeah,
for
yeah.
this is a guy book. Like you know, there's no. I mean, there's tenderness when they don't cuddle much after. It's one of those. But I feel this is a guy book. Like it's about guns, about action and whatever. So you
All
could
the
argue
criminals.
this is for your dad. This is a dad book. And then and he was in his like late 50s, early 60s, he would basically just kind of just sort of like, I don't want to say it's a wish fulfillment fantasy, but I feel like he would be just saying like, this is how I see myself. Like he's just kind of projecting himself onto this. I wouldn't be surprised if he thinks he's Max Cherry, right?
Just
He's the
getting this
guy.
super hot 40-year-old stewardess.
Yeah, but then this makes it a bit
So
more real
suave.
as well, because it's not like, oh, going for this young hot thing and whatever, because he knows like he's 60, so he's gonna have zero in common with someone who's 25. He's gonna have a lot in common with someone who's 45, and he's still gonna like describe her in a very sort of flattering way that she's still got it. She's a woman. She's not a girl. She's a woman. She has womanly curves. She has marks on her body, like stretch marks and shit like this, because life just happens to you. And then
She's been
and
married before like 3 or 4 times, all different relationships, like goes deep into that. Very,
yeah, and
very
he's
real, very believable.
yeah. So you could argue that he just writes these characters that are equally very plausible people.
Hmm.
Like I don't know. I read 52 Pickup, for instance, which we at this point I'm not sure when is this coming out.
It will have come out, the episode for Uncut Gems.
All right, okay, we talked about 52 Pickup at this point in our show, right? So I
Mhm.
read 52 Pickup, and it kind of just feels like when there's the one of the sort of important sort of aspects of that book is the sort of almost like a not a failing marriage, but um like a marriage that kind of just extinguishes on its own because they have like, I don't know, just very, they have old kids who are just adults themselves, they have their own families, and they're just kind of, everything kind of just dies down, and just the main character looks for some action on the side, and just kind of just leads him to just horrible problems in his future. This whole book is kind of based around like, this is what happens to you when you sleep around, okay? But then
You sleep around and it comes around.
well, yeah, but then it kind of comes back to this sort of idea of like, he writes these people who are just believable people. They're not all good, they're not all bad. They have their vices, they have their good things about them, and it's just, there's this 60-year-old guy like Max Cherry who's just like a former cop. He's grizzled. He's lived a life. He lives this sort of in this sort of guilt-ridden marriage that he just doesn't have the courage to leave this woman who clearly hates him and also abuses him as in just financially, almost like she's
Yeah.
just leeching off of him. And then there's this stewardess as well who just has this dead end job because she has to work some stuff from the past, and then she also has to, she just, I don't know, she's kind of stuck in this sort of rut, and they just meet each other, and then just they're not perfect, they may not be perfect for each other, but they find enough sort of overlap that they think this could work, this is great. And then you're hanging out with them, like when they're just talking to each other in the sort of mall or whatever. It's great. They're just like, you just sit there and you think to yourself, oh, it's great. Like, you even like, I don't know, you even kind of like spending time with Ordell, and because he's just the sort of larger than life kind of.
To be honest, I'd almost say that he's the co-protagonist
You
together with
think so?
Jackie Burke. I'd say he's more of a co-protagonist than Max Cherry.
To
And
me,
I
he's a
don't think
villain, right?
That's the thing.
So he's the antagonist, right? So who's the
I
antagonist in the book? Is there
that's
one?
that's uh,
It's Lewis,
just
is it?
just struggling. Luis is a dumbass who screws everything up.
He's a damn
Damn it.
antagonist.
Uh, honestly, like I think just by definition, in a more broad sense, of course, Ordell is the villain, is the antagonist, he's the one is plotting against Jackie and their happiness, and Max and his villains. He kills people, but at the same time, it goes back to what you just said about the characters. They're morally gray, and I
Mhm.
think there's an intent from Leonard's part to spend so much time with him, just hanging out with him, and Louis and Melanie and their backstory and the skinhead and all of that. That I think he's not a good guy, of course, but neither is he just a straightforward villain. To the point that I do generally think he's kind of like the co-lead of the book.
How is he not a straight up villain? Like the first thing he does in the book is just finds Beaumont, puts him in the trunk of his car or boot of his car, as I think it's supposed to be called, because
You know,
Americans have never seen an elephant if they think the trunk is in the back. But it's just saying. But and then just immediately just kills him. So he sees him as a threat because like he's gonna talk to the cops, and then that means just I need to get him out of my sight. Like he plots against the skinhead. He wants to kind of get him out of the picture by having him killed, right? So
well,
to me he's a villain. He's just a likable villain.
yeah, I wouldn't want him to be my friend. You never know what's going to happen with him. But it's no, I agree. He is a villain. He is a villain. But I think it's, for me at least, kind of a testament to the power of Leonard's character writing,
Mhm.
that he never fully feels like that. Like he's yeah, yeah. He's not as clear. I think the fact that he's so let's say weak, because he's kind of weak. He's very easily manipulated by Jackie, who keeps proposing like different plans to him. It's like, maybe you can do this and you can do that and blah blah blah. And he's so greedy that he kind of accepts them, and then he's scared and he has his doubts. I think he's so vulnerable that it's something you don't usually see in a villain. I think a villain in another writer would have had him be more stronger, more violent. I'm thinking of villains like the one from Pan's Labyrinth. For some reason, that pops up in my mind, but just it's
That's a
very
comparison
cruel.
and a half.
It's a very strong comparison. But just that's what I think of villains. Like, yeah, he can still have layers and some humanity to him, to
It doesn't have to be
themselves.
a Nazi.
It doesn't have to be a Nazi or a Franco captain regime, whatever. But still, yes, it's what you said. I'm just getting lost in my web right now. He's a likable antagonist.
But then I would add to this, like he makes a more of a perfectly rounded antagonist if you fold in Lewis and Melanie together into the same blob, as in like they're a
Hmm.
group. They're kind of plotting. Let's just say like against Jackie and Max and
Their
whatever.
goals go against, yes.
However, they within themselves they have their own sort of personal goals, which means like Melanie wants this, and Louis thinks that he Louis is kind of like, okay, well he's loyal, and he's also extremely stupid.
It's
Melanie's
just given up on life.
well, yeah, but Melanie's kind of smart. Like Melanie has this sort of she's smart and she's determined. She knows how to take care of herself. And then Ordell is more of a like he has this sort of he thinks he has a grand plan, but what he has a problem with, he doesn't know he doesn't know how to read people very well. It's because he surrounds himself with people who are just like at the earliest opportunity they'll just get him out. so, so yeah, so you can see that there's just that, but that makes an interesting dynamic, because in the real life there are no Bond villains unless you believe Elon Musk is one. But
Well,
uh, but in general, like you'd say, like your local mob boss is not going to be, uh, like like he's not gonna be like Kingpin from Spider-Man or something like this. He's not he's not gonna be a supernatural villain of some kind that he will be able to outwit and outsmart everyone. He's gonna have flaws. He's gonna be a person. He's gonna be a human being with his own sort of life experience behind him, dictating how he thinks, and then that will generate some like I don't know, errors in his ways, and then he's gonna also be subject to just fortune and misfortune of just how things pan out, right? So it kind of makes him I want to say well, likable, but believable antagonist, because I could honestly say that he's not one of, like, he's not Don Vito Corleone, that he's just um he's gonna
Just
think like,
ruthless.
yeah, he's gonna be ruthless, but he's gonna be loyal. He's gonna have this sort of strong moral code and sort of like this sort of spine about him, uh because he's a guy, like, if you think about it, because who's like, he used to be in a gang, for instance. Like, he just got this gig for himself, just because he was at the right time with the right place, and he had this sort of street smarts about him that's just made him just, and he was also ruthless enough that he just cornered this market of the whatever gun crime,
Hmm?
uh, and he was smart enough not to sell and traffic drugs. He's trying to do other things, and he's just have this mini empire for himself that no one, and he's too small to be picked out by FBI, and he's too big to be bothered by like drug lords. So he's just, this was his thing, but ultimately he's just a guy who just probably grew up in a ghetto. He doesn't have much of an education behind his belt, so he's kind of limited in some ways, and that
Yeah.
makes him a human, right? Because you could imagine that there will be someone somewhere in Miami who may actually just be kind of like that, just a local like gun lord who just like, you just barely finished sixth grade in school, and it's just he just happens to be just have this sort of charisma about him that surrounds himself by a bunch of people who kind of trust him, and then his days are numbered because someone's gonna figure out that he's probably not the smartest tool in the shed, but makes him real. I don't know. Makes these characters kind of just look like they're just made of flesh, and then that's the sort of main selling point. And I just
Yeah.
realized I'm just rambling. This is just what I do. Sorry,
I love it.
sorry,
No,
folks.
but it's true. It's true. It's true. And I love Movie Vortel that he's technically very rich, but he cannot access the money, so he has to take like
Yeah,
10,000 at a time or 50,000 at a time. So technically, he has almost like $1 million or whatever, but then he just cannot use the money. It's just it's something that's just something that makes me laugh so hard. Just
yeah.
in this whole narrative,
And there's this Mr. Walker who clearly is taking advantage
Mr.
of him
Walker.
as well, and you don't really know who he is. And then, but you can see how he's kind of this. To me, he's the equivalent of like this sort of local businessman who just runs his mouth a little, like just a lot, and then just talks a big game. And then when you think about it, he doesn't really have much capital, so he's never done big business. He's never negotiated with big clients. He's just showing people these like the videos of clips of like chicks with guns and whatever he has on there, because and just gives everyone the same spiel because he heard them on the TV. And Melanie knows all of this, and she knows he's an idiot because she sees this every day, and she knows like he keeps repeating himself in front of everyone. That means like he doesn't, like, this is not coming out naturally. This is a shtick. So, and
It's a
again,
stand-up routine, basically,
yeah,
just perfected.
but it makes her as well more real because she's kind of like, okay, I'm gonna hang out with him because like one day an opportunity will strike when I'll just take his shit.
She's a vulture. She's a vulture.
Yeah,
I think this is a great moment to transition fully into the movie. Jackie Brown. Oh, this is. I think this might be the first instance of a book that we talk about as a different title from the film adaptation. I think so. I'd have to double check, but I think so. But yes, the book Rum Punch was adapted in 1997 by one Quentin Tarantino, this hip indie filmmaker at the time, who just come out of the press with an Academy Award with Pulp Fiction, best screenplay, and he decided to do a passion project of his to do what to this day and probably forever will be his only adaptation of someone else's work. And so Tarantino loved Elmore Leonard, loved this character so much that he wrote a script by making one major change. Instead of having this blonde 40-year-old stewardess white woman, Jackie Burke, why don't we make her black? Why don't we take Pam Grier, a legend of blaxploitation, and make this her comeback vehicle to enter Hollywood once again and show how much of a badass she is. And why don't we make the whole movie a blaxploitation homage? And this is what we have: Jackie Brown, Jakub. What are your thoughts? What's your history with Jackie Brown as well? I'm so ready for this.
I mean, Jackie Brown, out of all Tarantino films, came to me a little bit later than all of it. I think I saw it after I saw Kill Bill films, for instance, and I saw
Mhm.
Kill Bills in the cinema,
Oh,
and so because it was one of those that was just kind of like almost under the radar. Like I was more aware of some like From Dusk Till Dawn or like Four Rooms as this is a new Tarantino sort of thing. He just like directed this one segment here, and he wrote the script for this, and he's in this, and he just does that, and then in the and then he just ends up having a moment with Salma Hayek that people now are like gross, which so some
Good
people
for
be
him.
like good for him,
Pat on the back.
if she was okay with this, I'm two consenting adults just doing this, I don't care. So the film kind of came to me a little bit later in life, and over time, because I keep coming back to Tarantino films every now and again because he's my favorite living filmmaker, like I'm not gonna lie. And then my sort of ranking of his films has always been kind of fluctuating. I was just like, oh, I love Pulp Fiction the most. I love Kill Bill Volume 1 the most.
It's
I
the
love
sign of
this. I love that.
a good filmography right there.
Yeah, because they're like, to me, they're all 5-star films.
Same, honestly.
No question about it. They're all
Well,
5-star
except
films.
for Rooms, I hope.
For Rooms, no. For
We don't
Rooms, I
count it. We
think
don't count it.
my mathematically is a 4-star film because there are two 5-star. There's a 5-star segment. There's a 2-star segment. It just averages to 4. It's just from 4. Like, there's one scene from Four Rooms that I remember, and that's in the Tarantino segment where they're just going like, okay, I'm gonna if you're not gonna fire this lighter on the first go, I'm chopping off a guy's finger, and just like, okay, 3, 2, 1. It's just the best.
And the quirky music just starts playing, and Tim Roth leaves.
It's just so good. Where was I? But then, as the sort of these films fluctuate, like Jackie Brown was always kind of just like just floating slowly to the top, just ever so slowly. So now I'm an old fart, and every time I rewatch this, it consistently comes up. Yep, like every time I watch this, I'll be just yes, that's the best. That's the best he's ever done for me. That's the best film he's ever like. That's the most entertaining, the most compelling, the best written, and then also now like I've. By the way, just fun fact. Yesterday, because we were talking, like, if you follow me on Twitter, you'll probably know that now. I have this weird relationship with Top Gun Maverick that I don't like it, and people just think this is a bad idea not to like it. So I just said, I'm gonna go and buy a ticket to go and see it again in the cinema because I mean, not buy a ticket. I get them for free because I have a subscription. But anyway, so I just got a ticket, and I just realized, Jackie Brown is playing at the same time.
Oh, really?
So I cancelled my Top Gun Maverick, and I went and saw it in the cinema. I saw Jackie Brown
That's a good
yesterday.
move. That's
Last
a
night,
good move.
I went and saw Jackie Brown in the cinema. Best decision of this year. It's just like I'm sitting there and just like tapping my foot, and just like you see this sort of graduate opening, and just across the 110th Street, and then I don't know, Strawberry Letter 23. It's just it's a film that's supposed to be seen on the big screen, and it's just the best. So it just slowly floated to the top, and now I'm rewatching this on the big screen, and now I can understand another reason why, because I may or may not have a bit of a crush on Pam Grier.
Oh, yeah.
It's just, I mean, she's in 1997. She was in like I think mid 40s, right?
She was, yeah.
Goodness gracious, what a fox! Just
She doesn't
Jesus.
look a day over 29.
No, she looks like if you look, she looks 40, right? But she looks
She's aged gracefully. Like that's just a person aging the way they're supposed to age. No artificiality to it,
yeah. And then
It's
there's
natural beauty,
yes,
natural high.
she looks like she's lived a life. She looks like she's lived a life. She's lived an interesting life. She has marks on her face to kind of to show for. but she's beautiful. She's just organically beautiful. She's just a great looking woman, and also just she looks like a woman. Like she's not like Bridget Fonda's a girl in the film, for instance, for me, just as a tangent. Like
It's yeah.
she has this sort of girl energy, and then she's just a woman. She has this sort of, and also she has like a slightly asymmetrical face as well. On like especially in the close up at the end, you can see it because she
Mm.
smiles to one side of her face, and then the other side of her face has this sort of wrinkle from the smile, and her nose is kind of slightly tilted to one side, and just makes her face so beautiful and interesting. It's just great, and I could see that, like there's someone like Tarantino goes like, this woman, I love this woman, I need to put her in my film. Like, look at her, she's just great. Like, I want to just film her and just watch her. Just this is just he probably just asked her, can you just please just mouth the lyrics to the song, like the whole song, and then he just probably just plays it to himself in the house, because then because he can. But the film is just a work of genius for me. It's just the best. My fourth most favorite film of all time after Jaws, Rocky, and Alien. so so it's a good company to be in. But yeah, and again I rambled. I'm so sorry.
No. I love the passion, and especially when it's for something like Jackie Brown, man. What a film! You said it all. You said it all. Basically, I also watched this late. This was my last Tarantino film back in 2018. It's something that I kept postponing. I don't know if it's you probably had this as well. Like when you love a filmmaker a lot, or any artist, to be honest, like when you know there's the, let's call it, last work that they've made that you still have to discover for yourself. Everything else after that will always be, a rewatch, will always be something that you've experienced beforehand, just kind of doing a fresh new take on it in your mind. But it
hmm
won't be 100% new. And so I kept postponing Jackie Brown, even though I'd seen all of his movies up until I think I'd seen everything it made. By 2016, I think I saw Death Proof for the first time.
Okay.
And it was just Jackie Brown. Like, it seemed 4 rooms, just Jackie Brown, just kept moving it and moving
Have you
it.
seen it before? Once Upon a Time.
Yeah. It's 2018.
Okay.
2018. It's April 2018 because it was on Netflix. And I was like, yeah, let's watch it on Netflix. That was the signs they were like going to remove it from Italian Netflix. I thought, fine, let's watch it. I saw it with my mother. And I was just, shocked. I was like, how do people not love this movie? How is this not in the same conversation as Pulp Fiction, as Inglorious Bastards, as all those other films? And I
It used
think
to be.
yeah, like it's I know it's kind of trendy to say no one talks about it, but still that's usually what happens. Some
Mhm.
people literally don't talk about it when they make very horrible articles about, Tarantino is a misogynist and here's why he hates women, and they don't mention Death Proof, and they don't mention Jackie Brown. It's like
Or
that's
Kill
cherry
Bill, like
picking.
any film with a female protagonist, which you could argue half of his filmography is.
Jennifer Jason Lee gets punched in the face and she bleeds. Therefore, misogynist. Anyway, they want to give Guardian
And a
opinions.
racist as well. Spike Lee thinks he's a
The
racist. Just like let's cast Pam Grier because I'm a racist.
honestly, like, of all the feuds in Hollywood, that's one of my favorites. Just Spike Lee and Tarantino, and Spike Lee shitting on him in Bamboozled. It's
Like
just
there's one thing I'm damn sure like the sort of MAGA racists from Kentucky never did was watch any blaxploitation films because it would be like there's black people in it. Fuck that.
their
Yeah.
exploitation cinema is Birth of a Nation. But I loved it. I loved it so much that it became like an instant favorite. So to be fair, like, it's Tarantino. Every movie on a first viewing has always been an instant favorite for me. But this one more than others. Like, I
Mhm.
must have listened to the soundtrack since then. Not kidding, hundreds of times. Like on a like I have a rotation of songs, but there's at least like 15 tracks from Jackie Brown's host that I just listen to at
What's your
least
favorite, by
once
the
a
way?
month. I honestly, the Delphonics,
Oh yes, that's a
Didn't I
good
Blow Your
one.
Mind is fantastic, but I do have a soft spot for Strawberry Letter 23.
A Strawberry Letter is also in Pulp Fiction, if I remember correctly.
Maybe.
Hmm.
but it's just it's so good. It's been
No,
a while
maybe
since
it's not.
Pulp Fiction actually.
Maybe
I don't
it's in
think he really
Kill Bill.
used music.
Maybe it's in Kill Bill, but he's used it again. Like I always remember, it's like I know he's used it again whenever I hear it. Anyway.
But anyway, and then it's one of those movies that's always been in the back of my mind, always since then. And during the pandemic, I was going through a whole watching some favorites with my flatmates. We were locked in uni, and I showed them Jackie Brown, and he was like, "Holy shit! Why haven't I seen this movie like 5 times already?"
Hmm.
Like, I need to watch this more. And this was my fourth viewing, I believe, for this podcast. And
Hmm.
this is the moment where I do completely agree. This is my favorite Tarantino film. It's there. Like, all the other ones are, Django is flashier. Inglorious Bastards is more exciting. It's more bombastic. I would say honestly, I don't know if it's the power of this podcast or maybe it's just growing after a few couple years, 2 3 years. But this and Once Upon a Time in Hollywood are kind of tied right now for my favorite
Hmm.
Tarantino film, and they are
Ah,
very similar in certain ways. But it's the hangout nature of it. That's something that Tarantino said very very explicitly while making this movie. It was like, I love my westerns, and like Rio Bravo and all the others. Like, just the characters. You spend more time with the characters. It's less about the story, and so he made a hangout movie, and the beauty of it is that that's what the book is about. Like, that's what we just talked about. That's the book. The book is about hanging out with these characters, and it just gradually becomes a more conventional, let's say, heist narrative.
mhm.
And for the most part, you just love spending time with these characters. And one thing is, reading them on the page, which is great. Another thing is having Samuel L. Jackson as Ordell, Robert De Niro as Louis Gara, Bridget Fonda as Melanie, and of course Pam Grier and Robert Forster as Jackie Brown
Mhm.
and Max Cherry, Jakub. The casting, just we've talked about Pam Grier, just a goddess, honestly, in this
Oh yeah,
film.
you see her from the
Just
profile, like Dustin Hoffman in The Graduate, and you just like for like I want to say three
that's a
minutes of an unbroken take, and I'm just thinking to myself, this woman's just on another level. Like, look at her, she's just smirking as well. It's just oh my
that's an opening. That's an old timer.
god, it
And then
is.
and the
And that
homage that
song,
still works. I never checked where 110th Street comes from, like which
from
exploitation
I
movie.
think it's from a film called Across 110th Street. I
Oh well,
can't be
there you
sure.
go. There you
It's
go.
I
There
think
you
it's
go.
a black exploitation situation.
1972. Yeah, 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 yeah.
Yeah. So it's fairly self-explanatory. uh, but yeah, the casting's so good. Michael Keaton as well.
Michael Keaton as Ray Nicolette.
Yes,
Yes,
it's just I don't know. And
this
then
quirky energy in him. It's
and
so
they also like they make these comments like it's because Robert Forster had hair transplants as well.
yes, yeah, yeah, yeah.
Because I remember like we recently did an alligator with Randy.
Yeah, on
You
Uncle
weren't in
Gems.
there for this. You missed out on this. And then he was like bold in 1980 something, right? Just getting
Jesus.
just and then they were making fun of us, just like, oh, you're balding. And then you can see and these hair plugs are really bad. Like you just you can see there's sort of like stitchings and it's just and then they actually just address it. It's just like, well, like they have this kind of conversation with Jackie Brown, and it's just like someone needs to say something about the elephant in the room. Like, come on, because even the audience are gonna be like, look at Robert Forster's hair. I just felt like it. But
Feels
then,
good,
yeah. Ordell is such an interesting character because I think I never imagined him as that in the book. I mean, the only other thing from the book I remember was that he is a black dude who's kind of has a flashy sense of fashion and he has a ponytail. That's it. But then he just looks like what? He's also a bit of a ginger and has this sort of system of a down thing going on
Representation.
about. the, the ginger mafia strikes again. But I agree. It's something else. This movie, something else.
It's a delight. It's that's what hit me this time because I don't think I've seen any Tarantino film since we talked about Once Upon a Time in Hollywood in the first episode of this podcast last year.
Hmm.
Um, and it's shocking how I know it's a statement that everyone makes, but it's a fair one to make. It is very much it's Tarantino's most mature work,
Hmm.
and it is for moments like the one you just mentioned. Actually, having a 5 minute sequence of Pam Grier and Robert Forster just sitting down and just talking about aging, growing
Music.
up, music, hitting a midlife crisis, bodies changing. It's something you wouldn't expect from a 30-year-old filmmaker that just came from two, very energetic first features that they will go on to make Kill Bill. That's all the action and the Western influences and samurai. Just this wonderful pastiche. It's so scaled back. It's so personal as well. That's just kind of, I had to think like he was very much younger than I remember actually making this movie, but it doesn't feel like it.
He was in his 30s, right? So it was still
Yeah,
a very much of a young hot shot, right?
exactly.
And the
And
book
it's
wasn't that
so
old either. That was
it was
what,
like 5 years.
yeah. So he probably just read the book, and he probably started working on the script anyway, just immediately after reading the book.
It's like a pet project of his. It's like, yeah,
Hmm.
yeah, I'm gonna do this. And how do you feel about that actually? Like the
Hmm.
fact this is his only adaptation of someone else's work. What does it say to you?
Well, it's an interesting sort of. I want to say it's an interesting specimen
Hmm.
because it equally you could if you didn't know it's based on a book, you could convince yourself that yes, this is an original Tarantino.
Hmm.
Like this is written. I mean, he rewrote a few bits because like he moved the setting from Miami to LA,
Yeah.
which which is I think part of what makes this such a profound hangout experience, because I think his most sort of hangouty films would be Pulp Fiction, this, and Once Upon a Time, which are all LA sort of set, and the sort of setting of LA plays a big part of this sort of experience, like the
True.
mall, which there are scenes in there where I just think like this like homaging body double in here, this sort of little sort of shot,
Yes.
like clearly is right. But I was like, I'm gonna
Yeah.
ask Nicolò if he thinks about this, and then
It's the stalking through the mall and people peeking and she's running through it. Yeah, yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
But I'm just thinking, is this the same mall? Not sure.
It says it's the largest mall in the world, which I don't
Yeah,
know if it was true at the time even, but it's
I
so
don't
fun.
know. Only here's another De Palma sort of thing when Pamker runs out of run out of the dressing room and she looks for Ray Nicolette, and then there's this sort of 360 shot around her. I was just like, this is obsession. Come on.
There's a split diopter as well. I'm trying to
There's a
remember
split
what
diopter in the courtroom
in the courtroom. Yes, we've seen Hay.
with Sid
She's
Haig, who was
also
also a co-star with Pam Grier before, and he also gives her a bit of a wink.
yeah. I love
It's
it. I
so
love it.
great. Ah, it's
Man,
so good.
it's also so sad that so many of these actors have passed away. Like Sid
Yeah,
Hay has died. Robert Forster passed away like 2019
yeah.
in
Some
October.
all the good ones are leaving. But coming back to how he changed the book, I want to say, or how he just molded the book into the sort of cinematic
Hmm.
format. I think it was an easy job anyway because he left most of it
Yes.
intact because the book is incredibly cinematic, as I just always thought. I mean, always
Hmm.
since August, just when I read it. But then uh, like he cut like when you think about this book is immensely lean, and he just you know it's lean as like a you know like a beef fillet, like if you get like your whole beef fillet is just pure muscle, there's no meat, and he went with a knife and then just removed all the sort of, oh, there's a little bit of a connective tissue here, and it's just now, and now it's a Wellington. That's what it is. That's a Wellington. It's just this big hunk of just pure protein, just blood red, bursting with flavor, is what
Just
it is.
primo quality.
Yeah, he just took out all this the skinhead subplot, this sort of shootout
Oh,
with
thank
the
God! Yeah.
grenades and rocket launchers that these people didn't know how to operate, which
There's
is
quite a
fun.
few.
It's a funny scene, but it's just like, yeah, who needs it? Who needs
Yeah,
to,
there's
like,
so much action that they removed. That's a fascinating choice.
yeah,
It's
it
not
just,
something that like a studio would ever say. It's like, oh, remove the scene where there's an actual explosion or where there's a shootout in the street
yeah,
or
and
where
one
they
of these sort of
kill
FBI,
skinheads.
and then yeah, the shootout in the house, the shootout in the street, the fact, I mean, but then there's like additional bit of drama with the other sort of FBI agent, his wife, and
Mm.
whatever. Who needs that?
It's
Like,
like
what
no
you
one
need is these
cares.
characters and this massive set piece that's kind of reenacted in sort of like a Dial M4 Murder sort of way,
Hmm.
where you have the trial run where everything goes to plan, and then you have the big plan where nothing goes to plan, and then you're left to think whether this is by design or not, and then and it turns out like Jackie Brown has everything kind of under control, but that's the sort of it's the beauty of it. Uh, so I almost feel like it's difficult to improve in terms of entertainment on what Elmore Leonard did in Rum Punch, but he did it. Like he knew how to make this shine, and I'm not sure whether he took notes from like I don't know if some of the producers, like some of the Weinsteins, were involved and was like, how about you just remove this character or something like this. You never know, because like Weinstein's had a nose for that shit, where they would just say like, this is gonna be too boring, just remove this, and then yeah.
Maybe.
But he made this, at a nearly 3 hour runtime, he made this thing.
Oh
Like he
man,
does.
yeah.
This is one of those films that does not, like you were just talking about. Like, what? Oh, Face Off feels like an 80-minute film. This feels like an 80-minute film.
Some people would disagree. I saw this again with my sister. First time viewing for her, she did not like it. She
Or
thought it
Jackie
was
Brown?
Jackie Brown. Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's taste, personal taste. I'll accept it. I mean, my acceptance phase after denial, anger, and bargaining, and all of that. I've accepted it. She doesn't like Tarantino. Um,
Does she think he's a misogynist? Please tell me she doesn't think he's a misogynist.
hasn't seen enough of his movies to make that statement yet. But no, but I can see her point in a way, which is probably why I think it's still not. I don't want to say it's not widely beloved because it is. To be fair, like people really like this movie, but I think it's not usually put on the same level as his most famous ones, probably because of the hangout nature of it. Because if you're watching, which is weird considering that all of his movies are kind of like that in a way, but like Kill Bill, shit ton of action in the second half. People can excuse some of the dialogue. Inglorious Bastards, it's a wide cast. It's always changing, different locations. Like it's keeping things fresh constantly. I think the fact that Pulp Fiction is a straight up comedy in my eyes, so that's why people really like that. Just a lots
Yeah.
of laugh, barrel a minute.
I mean, Pulp Fiction has this sort of additional allure of being told out of order, and
That as
that's
well. Yep,
that's
keeps you guessing like what's gonna happen next. Very thrilling as well, genre bending you could even say. But Jackie Brown is just chill. It's a comfort film for me at this point. It's just
it
something
is.
that puts me in a lovely mood. That's like, yeah, there's tension, but it's not like it. It's bearable tension. It's fun. I can enjoy it. It's relaxing. It's nice.
Mhm.
Just the plan. It's low stakes, small scale, just lovely, and it's probably too slow for some people. Like I was looking at the runtime just to see like when does everything happen. I was like, holy shit, 45 minutes for Jackie Brown to leave the prison.
Mm-hmm.
When you're watching the movie, it doesn't feel like that. That's
Yep.
like 20 minutes in for me.
Yep.
Then it's like, oh yeah, and that's the funny thing. Like even talking with my sister, she was like, yeah, the last 20 minutes at least something happens. I was like, wait, what's the last 20 minutes? It's like, yeah, when they actually start doing the plan. It's like, you mean the last hour of the movie?
Yeah.
It just
The last 20 minutes is just denouement of just like trying to get Ordell to come to Max Cherry's office.
pretty much. That's the crazy thing. It's you say it many times, but it just cooks. But it's a slow cook. It's just
Mhm.
it's just simmering very
I
slowly.
just
But it's
he decides to he makes a conscious decision to spend, I want to say, 2 minutes in a shot that's I want to say homaging, but I think people would say ripping off Hard Eight, when Pam Grier's just like sitting there in front of the like looking into the camera behind the desk, and she just points the gun, and he just
Ah,
puts
yeah,
away
yeah,
and
yeah.
puts the gun again, and it's just like Sydney and Hard Days, right? So so it's but he just makes a choice of just like lingering on this for a while. It's just like, why? Well, it's because you want to get into her head, in her head, because she's absolutely frightened of this confrontation that's about to happen, and that comes through the book, in the book as well. But
And meanwhile, Ordell and Max Cherry are just vibing to the Delphonics on the way there, and he
I
keeps
mean,
cutting back and forth.
you say vibing, I say this is a moment where just Ordell realizes, right?
That he's deep in love, you say?
No, that him and Jackie Brown are in on this together,
Mm-hmm.
because up to
I think
this
he
point
knew even beforehand,
I think
but
he's
that's probably
just
like confirmation.
yeah, I think he suspected, and then he's just like, because he's just, oh, she's doing this, and, like, like Max Jerry's just playing this as, um, well, I'm doing her a favor because I picked her up from prison. We just, I don't know, we just have this sort of weird relationship because I just drove her home and then we talked, whatever, and then she came to me. But then he realizes that, oh, he's part of the plan, because after Lewis tells him that he saw Max Cherry in the mall, and then
Mhm.
when they listen to this song, it's just, well, turn on the radio and just like, did not do it, babe. It's just, and he just looks at him and he knows everything. It's fine. Brilliant scene. Just, this is just great. But he just keeps like, I don't know. It's just again, it's a hangout experience, because in a different film it will be just 3 seconds and we're done, but we sit with them like for 45 seconds, and it's great. I don't know.
You wouldn't have the car scene. You wouldn't have so many. That's the thing. That's exactly it. If you want this to be conventional, it's gonna last 80 minutes, and none of the good bits will be in the movie. It would
Hmm.
just be the heist. In 40 minutes into the movie, they would be setting up the heist. You wouldn't have Jackie Brown meet up with the romantic co-lead, basically. Like, you wouldn't have that.
Hmm.
It's incredible. It's incredible.
I mean, you can even imagine, like, there's a scene which positions Ordell as a villain, because up to that you don't really take him seriously, because you meet him when he shows Lewis these TV shows, and he just goes like, when you absolutely positively need to get rid of motherfucker, it's just, but then
AK-47.
yeah, you see him just leave his car, going. This camera tracks behind him, and then he goes and sees Chris Tucker, which is Beaumont Livingston, and then just they have a conversation, and then they leave. They go into the car, and then he gets into the trunk. The camera lifts on a crane in the same shot.
Oh.
The car goes around the block, just comes back, and you hear like the music goes away and comes back, and then he just turns off the car, opens the trunk, shoots the guy, closes the trunk, and leaves. Right? Okay, this whole scene is 5 minutes, or at least, right? At
At
least.
least.
And I don't know. It's
That's an
just,
old timer sequence, honestly. That's what the first time watching this movie. That's where I thought, like, okay, this is a master. This is great.
yeah,
This is fantastic.
yeah,
And it's like half an hour into the movie. So
yeah, exactly. And then there are these moments in there. It's like, don't make me put a foot in your ass. And then just like they have these sort of moments where just you spend 3 minutes with people just establishing this chemistry, that she doesn't want to pick up the phone. She thinks, just go and pick up your own phone, you idiot, right? But you just
she's got a
spend time
point.
with them, and then that's what makes it a hangout film. And I feel like maybe that's why it's not beloved, because this whole revenge part of this, because I think at the core of it, you could say this is a revenge story, because Jackie Brown is taking revenge on Ordell for having her go through this, and with the coke and everything, right? It's it's just underneath it, like the whole love story is even underneath it, this sort of experience of just sitting there with these people, right? Whereas something like Kill Bill just wears this sort of revenge fantasy on its sleeve. Same goes
Hmm.
for Inglourious Bastard. It's more overtly like, this is a revenge tale about these samurai, or these sort of like cowboys dressed as Nazis, like this is kind of different, out of different cloth, I think.
Well, it makes me think of a conversation that I had with a friend years ago. It was after he watched Three Billboards, the Martin
Mm-hmm.
McDonagh movie. We was just kind of, I don't even remember. It was basically just a conversation about plot versus characters and which matters most. And they kept saying you can have bad characters in a good story. That was his thesis, and he was using Three Billboards as that, where he was like, I don't really care for the characters, but I like the mystery and the story behind that. And I was just like, how can you like the movie without liking the characters? The characters are the movie. And that got me thinking, like, how 99% of the times that's the case. The
Mhm.
characters are the movie. I genuinely cannot think of a movie where I go like, you know what? I don't like any single character nor care for them, but the story is very good.
I think I
It's
would
not,
add a
not in terms of
caveat to this.
likability. Yeah,
No,
go
go
for
ahead,
it.
go ahead, go ahead, go ahead.
No, no, go for it. I want to.
All
I
right.
want to hear if you have a pick.
I would have a caveat to this because this is something that I mean I've always had this distinction between there's a plot and there's a story and there's
Mm-hmm.
characters, and
Mm-hmm.
so a plot is what, and then something I listened to, and this is a shout out to Roger Avery and Quentin on their Video Archive podcast because they talked about this, and and Roger Avery contextualized this for me. I think just this sort of in distinction I had in my head for many years in the best way possible, because he knows what he's talking about. He's an accomplished screenwriter, and he says plot is what brings you into the film, right? You're coming here to see James Bond save the world and dismantle the bomb, and then chase the bad guy in a car, and then just go into a boat, and then chase him to a rocket into outer space and kill him, right? That's the plot. That's the plot. Just you following these people along, and that's it. That's it. That's what plot gets you. One viewing. You come back for the characters. You come back for the story between them. You come back for the chemistry. You don't come back for the plot. Just like, I feel like I feel like watching the same set of explosions and the same sort of intrigue again, because I enjoy looking at people in the boat chasing each other. No, you come back for the experience of looking at, say,
Seems like you're describing Face Off.
I actually had this. So, like, you come back for Nicolas Cage and John Travolta bickering, right? Or like you come back like for Star Wars, like you come back to be in the same room when like Han Solo goes like, "Oh, I'm cold too," and then Chewie goes like, just and it's just let's get some power converters, or like you. I rewatch Jaws like at least once a year, and I never get bored, even though I know exactly what happens when.
It's
Uh,
true.
and then, but I'm there for these people on a boat. Just Hooper drives the boat, chief. This. So I'm there for these little nuances, for discovering every time something new about these people, that they're actually made of flesh and they're not just stencils or just stand-ins or they're a necessity for the plot to continue. So I would say that you can have a successful one-time experience with just plot.
Those are the most forgettable movies.
Yeah, and
That's
that would be it.
content. That's
Yes,
content.
yes,
That's not art.
exactly. So that's a McDonald's burger. Like I just had a meal. It was a burger. It's fine. I can move on with my life. But this is not going to be something I'll just wake up in the middle of the night thinking about. Do you remember this grilled halloumi on that burger I just had?
Can't wait to have it again.
Exactly. Yeah. It's
But that's how I think. Like, I think nowadays, especially, people are just dying for stories, for plots. I think that's part of ironically, it's part of the obsession with.
for plots or for stories they're dying.
Just let's say they're both the same, just to simplify the conversation. For
Mhm.
stories, they're starving for no, they're starving for plots. Sorry, to use the terms that you were using in the same way.
Look, for
They're
me,
starving
like
for
plot is the
plots.
A to B to C to D. The story is the
That's
characters,
it. That's it. That's
the
it.
experience, the chemistry, right? That's the arc of like Jackie Brown growing to realize that she loves McCherry's. That's the story, right?
yes. That's
The
that's
heist is
why
the plot, right?
that's what I think people like my sister and like others that I know they don't like Jackie Brown. That's what they have a problem with. It's just this obsession with there has to be a point and there has to be something to go to. And so, like, why are we spending 5 minutes in the opening just watching hot girls shooting machine guns with Samuel L. Jackson talking over them? Why are we spending 5 minutes in the mall with Max Cherry just enjoying a good time with Jackie Brown? Why are we like all of those moments? They add up. in the grand scheme of things, if you're watching it exclusively for the plot, they add up to nothing. They don't really give you anything, to be honest. That's just how it is. But that's not the point, and that's not the fun of it, and that's just not how cinema is, in my opinion. Like, there's no really good movies, like you said, that just have a good plot and that's it. And it's like you don't care about the characters, you don't care about anything. And I think that's the beauty of Jackie Brown to me. Like, it's what you said, just spending time with these characters. That's why you come back. I come back not because I want to see. Well, like, I don't come back because of the highlights, some could say, like De Niro shooting Bridget Fonda because she's very annoying, or Jackie Brown smarting everyone. Like, those can be seen as plot points, but also they're inherently related to the characters that they are. They're inherently related to the way that you've seen everything unfold before, and all the silly conversations. I love that this movie, again, as someone taking coffee in a way that's different from other people in Tarantino movies, with Max Cherry taking it all black with nothing in it. It's just
See,
the small
another
touches.
another anti-racist sort of commentary is like, oh, Tarantino's a racist. Like, he actually wrote a line, it's like, black is fine.
Which this is no milk, no nothing's fine. I mean, especially if the alternative is expired milk,
Oh yeah,
everyone should take
I
black.
have some cheese in my coffee. What are these little
If you wait
granules?
5 minutes, it grows a tree. But speaking of which, and this is kind of like the last main point I really want to talk about. You mentioned racism. This is a blaxploitation movie, or at least a homage to them. It uses music from. I watched it recently, actually. Freaking uh, Foxy Brown. It's how do you feel about this whole blaxploitation narrative and use and homages and references?
I don't really think I have much of an opinion on this because well, of all sort of subgenres of cinema, I think blaxploitation is kind of still remains in my blind spot, and predominantly due to lack of availability. Like, there was a time when I think I could probably watch Foxy Brown, and I was just like, oh, I'll put it on my watch list on the Netflix, and you're just like, where is it now? So
The good times where you could find them on Netflix.
yeah, but I think now it actually may become a little bit better because I think people like Arrow are starting slowly to kind of just come out with these films. So I don't have much of a history of blaxploitation as a whole. I don't mind necessarily the fact that this is homaging this, because I think he's taking very interesting sort of I know what he's homaging where, because like I've seen so many video essays about Jackie Brown already. But so they kind of know where the references are, and then how he's referencing these films, and he has a very loving relationship with this kind of cinema. I suppose Spike Lee, this is where Spike Lee goes and says, but he's a white man remaking or just homaging black cinema, so this is cultural appropriation. Go away. Like, Jamie Foxx had a had a thought about this Spike Lee just going, just like, he's just a jealous old man. It's just like, no, like, you're not a voice of an entire race of people. We're allowed to have our own opinions, and that's Jamie Foxx saying, like, I'm fine. It's just
That's Samuel L. Jackson saying the same thing, and also collaborating multiple times with Spike Lee. It's kind of like, it's fine. Like, I do this because I believe in it. It's not like I'm a slave being forced to do this shit. It's like, chill,
it's like,
Spike.
I mean, he's kind of like on the same sort of level of, like, if you were sort of, because you're Italian, if you were just if you were just angry at me making Italian dishes because while I'm not myself Italian, so I don't understand the culture or background of the dish I'm making. I'm just like, and I'm 100% sure you'd be like, I'm really happy people are spreading the word and just having a good time with the cuisine my people invented.
It ends up being gatekeepy in a way.
Yeah, so like on this level, I don't know if that was your angle. Do I have a problem with someone like Quentin Tarantino just indulging in a part of cinematic culture that may not be necessarily culturally his? I totally like this because he's a big known sort of name at this point as well. So he's
Yeah.
bringing attention to stuff. that I would have otherwise not probably even known. Like I wouldn't have known who Pam Grier was at the right age of like, I don't know, 14, 15 or 17 when I watched this, right?
Hmm?
And so I'm totally on board with this. And then this is still kind of like on my bucket list of things to kind of just go through the blaxploitation sort of 70s and 80s sort of cinema, because, well, for lack of a better word, it's just unavailable to me without just, sailing the high seas, if you know what I mean.
Da-da-da-da-da-da-da.
Or just spending a lot of money on really shitty quality films, because I mean, in terms of presentation, because there will be just like old VHS tapes for like $50 a piece.
Jesus. Yeah, they're worth watching. I recently watched Coffee. I'd
Hmm.
seen Foxy Brown a couple years ago, like 2 or 3 years ago.
Hmm.
Both with Pam Grier. There's a lot more that I'd like to watch as well, but I do think that's always. I mean, we talked about that ad nauseum in the in every every time we talk about Tarantino, the way he
Hmm.
uses references and all these influences. They're so organically implemented in his filmmaking and in his scripts that if you don't know it, it's like what you said. Like if you don't know it, you don't even notice it.
Uh-huh.
Just like
Which is
even some,
great.
it's great. It's great. It's for
Ah.
those that know, it's a lovely wink, and for those who don't know, it still works wonderfully well. Like you don't need to have a master's degree in blaxploitation cinema to appreciate some of the musical choices in here, like
Hmm.
taken from soundtracks of blaxploitation titles. Which so many of these are bangers. They're so good, so many good songs. Um,
But he
but
doesn't he doesn't reference these films just to barge in again.
Yeah,
Like
yeah, go
some
for it.
filmmakers will make references, and then they will be just pertinent to some characters or to some chemistry or to some understanding or interpretation of the film as a whole. If you don't see that he's almost like ripping off Paul Thomas Anderson or Brian De Palma, um or he's just lifting lines from like an obscure Italian film like Mad Dog Killer or something like this, then it doesn't matter. Like to me, this is almost like what if I actually come back and having seen Hard Eight, I come back to see the scene where Jackie Brown does the sort of something that like initially thought was an homage to Taxi Driver, and I see, oh, this is what she's doing. This is what he's doing. That's cool. Like I just feel like I won $1 million, like just when you just find these things.
The
So
golden Easter eggs.
yeah, and if you don't, the movie's great just on face value. Like if people just like don't fish out these things, like it doesn't like I don't know, like someone like M Night Shyamalan. We had this conversation on the Village episode when I was just saying like this, like you can see this is he's doing a Hitchcock homage in here. Like this is clearly he's doing something in here, like for a reason.
Mhm.
If you don't pick up on this, you may be losing part of the experience. But in here, if you don't, still cooks. Like it's still just like if you don't have to know that this film kind of just like the whole set piece is kind of like Dial M for Murder, or like there's
Mhm.
this like 360 shot from like Body Double and an Obsession. You don't have to know this. It just looks great. Or you don't have
It's
to know
part
that
of the
the
fun.
suit in that she tries on is exactly the costume that Uma Thurman had in Pulp Fiction, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Which
You
is a
don't have
great
to.
suit, to be honest.
I know she
Jesus.
looks the bomb as well, but that's just Pam Grier.
But yes, I think also the exploitation angle adds an extra layer of thematic richness to Elmore Leonard's book,
Hmm.
because he uses this as an opportunity to kind of delve a little bit, not too much, because Tarantino cares about themes to a point, and I think it's also for the better sometimes. Like it doesn't feel like he has an agenda with his movies.
Hmm.
And even in this one, the fact that she's a strong, independent black woman, 44 years old, holding her own. There's some moments in here that I really love. I think the when
He's
she
not
meets
making prey is what he's not doing, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And like when she meets Sharonda in
Yes.
the mall, it's like this 19-year-old girl, and you've heard the name before because Ordell's
Hmm.
talking about it. It's like, ah, yeah, she thinks she's in Hollywood. I'm just leaving her in Compton in this horrible apartment. He's probably pimping her out. She looks like she's on drugs. She doesn't
Hmm.
look too healthy or good. And there's this small interaction between uh, Jackie Brown and her that's just so lovely, and you can see the humanity that's in Jackie, which kind of ties with the revenge angle that you mentioned earlier. That's just kind of where it clicked. Yeah, it is kind of a revenge plot because it almost feels like she is with her quest, let's say, she's kind of avenging all these people, all these women, because he has an harem basically of them. Like every
Mm-hmm.
safe house has a woman in there, and you see one of them is kind of seducing maybe Louis. Who knows? It's a very fun scene, but it
Or
feels like
Simone.
he's
Did
Simone.
she
Yeah,
put a
yeah,
show for you? Mm-hmm.
yeah. I've seen this many times. I've seen that already. It's a fun moment, but again, like it makes you think, like, what do these women do? It's like I don't. It's not comfortable. It's not nice. Um, and even when Ordell gets in Sharonda's apartment, it's an absolute mess. Just this dump of a place.
Mm-hmm.
It's unbearable smell and all of that. It's I think, and again, it's not deep per se. It's not like his Tarantino comes out of the movie going like, this is why healthcare and welfare in the US have to improve. It's like it's not a Spike Lee movie, of course, but I think it's by making this simple change with the protagonist and putting it into the genre of exploitation, it's kind of saying something a little bit deeper than what was present in the original text, which I think is
So,
neat.
so you think that there's so then Ordell now it kind of makes this whole plot a little bit more sort of geared to um sort of like this woman taking revenge on this, well, let's just say this black woman taking revenge on this black guy who actually takes advantage of his own kin, right? Not sure it's all
That's
there. I think it's just highly projected because I think it's just I don't think this is intended in any way.
that's how many blaxploitation movies are. That's
Mm-hmm.
the ending of Coffee. Not to get into spoilers for a 1973 blaxploitation film, but that's the ending of it, where it's like, oh, you thought this black politician who's going to change the world was good, and actually he's taking advantage of the whole situation to kind of sell drugs in the black markets to keep the people controlled, and this part of the problems. It's like holy
Mm-hmm.
shit. And so it feels kind of you know, like that. And also, it's just nice to have a mature interracial relationship, some
Mm-hmm.
people would say, um, which is very tender. It's very sweet.
I
Tarantino
mean,
has never been a sexual filmmaker, and the whole relationship between Max Cherry and Jackie Brown is very adult without being physical, very intimate without consuming it.
well, in terms of consuming it, I think it's one of the. I mean, just before we started, I was just thinking, like, is this the only film that he's ever made where there's an actual sex scene in it? And because there's a,
the
again,
quickie,
hmm?
the quickie.
Which is again like blink and you miss it, sort of homage to Shampoo, because this is
I've never
where
seen Shampoo.
Carrie Fisher goes to Warren Beatty, just wanna fuck. Actually, I guess it's wanna fuck, and then cut to 90 minutes and 30 something seconds later, right? Which is, and here's the joke: it's like 3 minutes later, and just like De Niro's done.
It's the most depressing, unlovely sex
it's
scene
it's important to get there first, you know.
at his age, especially.
So, but yeah, and I was just thinking, no, there's another sex scene in this film, where, well,
He's there.
yeah, in Glorious Bastards, where just I think,
Ah, yeah, yeah, yeah. The flashback to Goebbels
yeah, Goebbels just banging
and this
someone
translator.
behind. Yes, uh, yeah, I think there's that. Not sure if there's a rape scene in Django, but I don't think it qualifies as a sex scene now.
I don't want
But
to go there.
no, so yeah, I feel like he's always kind of just stayed away from that kind of sort of indulgences. What makes it interesting, I think, the fact that it's a blaxploitation film, and in the fact it's an Elmore Leonard adaptation. If you kind of read a little bit more of them, you'll see that um, racism and racial interactions play an important role in his stories. Like you could argue that, I mean, I can already see like some 21-year-old these days going like picking up an Elmore Leonard book. It's like, oh, we need to cancel him because he's a racist. I'm like, no, these characters are. Not sure he is, but because you could argue that they are racists in there. Like there are these people who have these sort of notions of like, I'm better than you because you're of a different color than me. And in the book it kind of comes out a little bit more clearly.
Mm-hmm.
um, especially when they refer to one another in certain ways. And then this is where like Ordo actually thinks he's better than even other people of his own kin, which is kind of where you were, I think, what you were alluding to as well, that he's kind of just he thinks himself superior um to to his own sort of community even, and he's actually actively leeching off of it. And 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 then this is where Spike Lee goes like, you can't use the N word. Like, I'm like, these people are using it every day, and then he's writing them like Elmore Leonard was writing them as livable, like livable sort of believable people. So if they saw all of a sudden like a black gangster is not throwing the N word left, right, and center, he would look like he's written by Jan Martel. It's just yeah. So that's my take on the blaxploitation and the sort of like the racial sort of politics of the film, if there is any in it.
Yeah, it's very low. It's not particularly prevalent, but it's
Mhm.
something that I was thinking about during this rewatch. I do really want to keep on watching more Pam Grier films after this.
Well,
Again, it's just a
just to
shame.
look at her, just to look
Just
at
look at
her.
her. She's also a great actress. Just to be honest, like everyone in this movie delivers a great performances, but she,
So
well,
natural. Oh my goodness, she's so
I
natural.
and again,
Hi
it's something.
Max, like in the mall, and just has this beret backwards, which is the 90s, right? But
Still,
and
she still rocks it. She does it, and it's like, yep.
but like if she did this to me, I'll be just like, I love you. It's just
And we're in that moment, we're all Max Cherry, just kind of like, yay!
like,
This massive smile, like, holy shit, yes.
after the film, I'm like Max Cherry at the end. We're just like left with this like a lipstick on his face. Just, can I call you back? And he just thinks about his life. He just
So give me half an hour,
give
just
me
just to think it over.
he just thinks like, I'm gonna chase after this girl, and it's just like, I think I love this one. Like this the look on his face. He's just like, I think I'm in love. And by the way, the scene where he is kissed by her and she puts a finger on his mouth. That's also from some film. Of Pam
How do you
Grier.
feel about this change, this different ending? In the book, they kind of go away together. It's the more naively romantic ending, we could say. Where it's like, yeah, and they live happily ever after, enjoying their trips and the $500 million, no, $500,000.
In my head, the ending is the same
Okay,
because as the credits roll, I imagine Max Cherry getting into a car and chases after her as she just mouths the lyrics to Across the 110th Street, and then she just turns left. She's like, what is this car doing overtaking me? Just like brake checking me all of a sudden. Oh, hi, Max.
again waving from the.
Just get out, just pull over. And then they just like stop, and then like the music swells, and then they just embrace, and that's it. This is when the real credits roll. So to me,
That's
the
wishful
ending's the
thinking.
same. That's my wish fulfillment. Because I live like in my head, the look on Max Cherry's face actually says that he's made up his mind, and he's just like, yep, I'm leaving this thing, and I'm gonna chase
You
after
think
this
so?
woman. I think so. I think he is.
I
Like
think she's given him newfound meaning in life in a way.
hmm
Like if
yeah.
he had left his job beforehand, like he wouldn't have had this adventure. We could say it
hmm
wouldn't have helped her out. He wouldn't have felt alive again. She kind of gives him this new second wind of
yeah.
sorts to just starting his life again, and just this is what I do, and I do it well, and I can help other people just like I helped her. I think it's more noble. I think it's more, again, maybe more mature. Just it's such a strong change for him to make, to not have the more crowd pleasing happy ending of the two of them together. It's more bittersweet, and it makes it more touching, I'd say.
hmm I think it's a smarter ending as well, because you could then your ending's equally as good as mine, because it's all kind of just like you're free to project whatever you want, and it
Yeah.
still makes sense, and it still makes it satisfying.
Yes.
So
And they still kiss, which is, it's like, yes, at least they do that. It's very sweet. It's very close.
yeah.
It's very, again, like you said earlier, it's very natural. It's very real. It's not a movie kiss. It doesn't go the Palma mode, like in body double.
Yeah,
It's
there's
just a
no like the camera doesn't
sweeping
sweep,
music.
and then they don't go like full on like Rock Hudson or just Cary Grant where they have to turn to the side and then just count to three and just nah. It's just like they just open like their mouths agape, just and just jeez, don't eat this woman, Cary.
Jeez, yeah. It's lovely. Well, Jakub, I have one last question for you then.
Mhm.
Which one do you prefer?
I think this is easy,
Jackie
yeah.
Brown the film or Rum Punch?
I mean, I really like the
It's
book.
Rum Punch.
I
It's
really
the
like the
best
book.
book.
I really do like the book. But this
But it's no
movie,
Jackie Brown.
is just like Quentin. If you're listening to this, and I know you're into podcasts these days, so if you're listening to this, just hit me up. I'll talk about film Twitter. You know, but send me an email. I don't know, but it's the love story. Like like some of my favorite love stories are like I don't know the Before trilogy, or like Lost in Translation, and they're all sort of like on the same level. And then Jackie Brown is just it's just a movie that puts me in a mood in a mood to live. Like I watch this and I just think to myself, like, I'm happy I'm here. Like I'm happy I'm I want to be here for longer. So like it makes me want to go and just live a healthier lifestyle so I can enjoy this planet a bit longer. So- and then and it's my favorite Tarantino film. It's one of my favorite films of all time. It may be even better than Aliens. Probably not better than Jaws, but 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 they're all kind of like interchangeable on some level. They all give me different things, and then in terms of like Tarantino's filmography as well, I've always kind of had this mnemonic in my head. And it's like, how do you arrange a 5-star filmography? And to me, I see them as children. Like if I was a parent, these would be my children. Like, and then I like Reservoir Dogs because it was the first. It's the firstborn. It's always going to be special. I like Pulp Fiction because it's the most accomplished. And I like I like Kill Bill because it's the one who has the coolest sort of ideas, and it has the sort of idea. It always kind of takes you by surprise. And then there's Jackie Brown, which is your firstborn girl. She's your little princess. And then Jackie Brown, the film, is my little princess. I love this movie with my whole heart. I just love it so much. It just aches. So no, Rum Punch is not better than this. But without Rum Punch, there's no Jackie Brown. So hats off to Leonard.
There you go. There you go. Beautifully put, man. Honestly, that's almost got me emotional there.
Oh Jesus, it's like
Jackie
Brendan
Brown.
Fraser.
It's like, oh, it's like the whale.
It's just the way. Okay, anyway,
It's true. I fully agree. Jackie Brown is better than the book. It's better than Rum Punch. I'm sorry, Elmer. I know you're dead if you're watching us from above. If you're listening to this,
I think he agrees.
he probably agrees. He gave it his blessing. He was very supportive of. I think all of his adaptations, at least most of them. Always had a hand in making them happen, which is lovely on his part.
Mhm.
But yes, it's very tender. I think that's the key word for me. Just everything in this movie. It's not over the top. It's fun and it's funny, but it's never overtly a comedy. It's never overtly any specific genre. It keeps it so low key that it's beautiful. It's like a long warm bath. It's like a delightful fancy dinner in a place that you love to go to. It's comfort. It's pure comfort cinema to me. And I don't remember. I hope I had this in my top 100 when we did it.
I hope you had.
It was. Yeah. Okay.
Because if not,
Just
this is
checked.
a scathing omission.
It was in my top 25. So if I were to do it now, it'd be in my top 15 by looking at it very quickly. So it's again, it's a masterpiece. It's Tarantino's finest, in my opinion. There are more technically proficient movies. There are more impressive achievements in terms of structure and maybe even screenwriting, we could say, and acting or whatever. But also no, also just Jackie Brown is just magical. Ah, I think we did this movie and book justice with this.
You'd hope so, right?
with this
Spike Lee still
conversation.
hates us.
Spike Lee has
How can you
blocked
like
us.
this? Yeah.
It's like anyone who likes Jackie Brown gets blocked on Twitter by me and Instagram. But also, thankfully, if you're listening to this, hopefully you're not Spike Lee. Hopefully you don't have blocked us on Instagram and Twitter. Jakub, where can our listeners find you?
Oh, you can find me in your nearest cinema when watching Jackie Brown.
Just on a loop.
if just on a loop, or um, yeah, you can. Well, I don't have any more puns. You can find me on Twitter at Talk About Film. You can find me on Letterboxd as Jakub Flasz, and then you can find my writings flashandfilm.com, and then occasionally on Clapper. And then also you can find my voice on Uncut Gems podcast, which I host together with you, Nick, and then with Randy, our good buddy, who's with us in spirit today. Because I'm pretty sure he loves Tarantino just as I do. So at Uncut Gems Pod on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok, and wherever, all major platforms. Every week we review at least one film. Mostly one film that kind of either slipped through the cracks or used to be liked and it no longer is, or was liked by the critics and hated by audiences, or vice versa. And then recently we did like The River Wild. We did, and then we're also just in collaboration with this show. We're doing 2 different Elmore Leonard adaptations, which is 52 Pickup and Out of Sight. So there's stuff to listen, and then so if you're interested in my stuff, you can read it on flashandfilm.com or listen to uncutgemspodcast.com as well. That's me.
A lot of good stuff on the horizon. Lots of good stuff. Meanwhile, you can follow me on Twitter and Instagram at Nicky97, and there you can find my link tree with links to my YouTube and Vimeo channel with all of my short films and other projects. You can find my writing on Clapper Ltd as well. And of course, you can find this podcast on these platforms. You can follow us on Twitter and Instagram, Death Adaptation and Death by Adaptation Pod, respectively. We'll see you again in 2 weeks, where me and Johan Gledo, my sometimes co-host, will come back to talk about another special Venice recording, Venice experience. We will be talking about Luca Guadagnino's Bones and All. So stay tuned for that. Be sure to follow us. Thank you for listening. Thank you for liking, subscribing, all that good stuff. We hope to see you soon, and we hope you have a fabulous day. Bye bye.